The meeting is now being recorded, and I will now take the sederunt for this meeting of the Petitions Committee held on the 19th of April 2022. So I can see that we have present Councillor Donnelly, Councillor Fulton, Councillor Horsham, Councillor Kerr, Councillor Logan. I have apologies from Councillor Nelson, and we have Councillor Robert Brown substituting. I have apologies from Councillor Nelson, and we have no substitute. I have apologies from Councillor Norman Ray, and we have Councillor Robert Brown substituting. We also have present Councillor Scott, Councillor Toner, and we have a number of officers present today. I'll hand back to yourself, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Item number 1 is any declarations of interest? No, good. We will go straight on to item number 2, which is the petition requesting traffic calming measures at Westwood Hill, East Kilbride. These are on your committee papers, pages 3 to 8. And I'll ask Mr McFadden to present his submission and to make any additional comments that he feels necessary.
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. I've never done anything like this before, so you'll have to forgive me if I don't get the formalities correct. Amada Street, interesting. Amada Street just out here. I noticed in the half-mile distance down Amada Street and into Burnback Road, we've got 12 pedestrian crossings. 12. Now, going by South Lanarkshire Council criteria, there must have been a lot of death and carnage in that half-mile distance. In my area of Westwood Hill, there's not one pedestrian crossing. Not one piece of road engineering in the whole of Westwood Hill. The question that the Westwood Hill community asks is, why are we so undeserving? I've got to say, there's a lot of anger in the community. A lot of pessimism, because people in the community have, for years and years, pleaded with the council to do something, to introduce traffic calming measures, to introduce pedestrian crossings, and the response they get basically is talk to the hand. The same repeated nonsense, and I'll use the word advisedly in here, which I can challenge, year after year after year. So there's anger, there's pessimism, and I'm talking about when I was organising this petition, I spoke to a lot of people. I do what politicians don't do these days. I actually chat doors, and not one person disagreed that the road at Westwood Hill was dangerous and unsafe to cross. Not one person. So, if we go through this document, by South Lanarkshire Council's stated admission, pedestrian safety is only a consideration after people have been injured or died even. It's in the document, it's in there in black and white. Even then we're informed, and once again it's in the document, they might possibly introduce safety measures at some time in the future. And even then, at a very marginal percentage of identified locations. I think the figure for this year is maybe 5%, which is shameful, absolutely shameful. And as I said in my introduction, there's not one pedestrian crossing in the entire Westwood area. Not one traffic calming measure. What is it that makes the people of Westwood so undeserving? Go outside Westwood, into other areas of East Kilbride, you'll find these things, but not in Westwood. It's clear that South Lanarkshire Council officials for years have hidden behind disingenuous statements and statistics. In fact, I've got an email from Colette Stevenson when she was a councillor. She's now an MSP for East Kilbride. 5 years ago, she actually came and looked at Westwood Hill, and her response from doing that was, I'm going to push for a pedestrian crossing, but it's the money, don't you know? I spoke to a relative official who's in this room today, years before that, and asked about traffic calming measures, and his response was to laugh and say, oh, we couldn't possibly have traffic calming measures because ambulances have to get up and down. then that's an argument for having traffic calming measures nowhere at any time. That's the kind of thing that we have to put up with. That's the kind of thing that people in my community who have pleaded with the council have to put up with. So some of the statements in here are laughable. And to be honest with you, I've read some of the paragraphs to people, and the ones that I've read to them, the response I've got is people have laughed. So one of the paragraphs, it says, and I quote, "The majority of drivers undertake journeys in a courteous and considerate manner." What does that even mean? Does it mean that they politely fly up and down Westwood Hill at 15, 60 miles an hour? Because that's what happens. And the road is just as dangerous when the traffic's at a low level. Because quite often when the road is quite quiet, when Westwood Hill is quite quiet, some drivers think that gives them carte blanche. It's safer to drive up the hill at 50 miles an hour. And then we've got the use of gap assessments, which, as far as I can see, take no account of disability affecting people's mobility, mobility scooter or wheelchair users. I've got a neighbour that uses a mobility scooter. I've seen her try to get across that road, and far from easy, let me tell you, waiting for a gap in speeding traffic. Takes no account of people with visual impairment or hearing loss. I'm nearly 70. Be 70 in a few months' time. I've got a long-term disability which affects my eyesight. I've also now got hearing loss. I wear a hearing aid. Both of these things make it more difficult to estimate the gap when you're trying to look at speeding traffic. I don't see anything in any of the documents here, any of the gap assessments, where that's taken into account. I did ask if there's been a disability impact assessment made. I made a freedom of information request, but I've not had that information yet. Also, you might have someone dependent on an assistant dog. And in the gap assessment information I see, I don't see any information, any reference to Westwood Hill. It's called Westwood Hill for a reason. There's quite a steep incline with a blind summit over which motorists speed. I've seen some accelerate over the summit. Now, blind summit, that means literally you can't see. Motorists can't see what's over the summit, and pedestrians can't see motorists until they're almost on top of them. Don't see any reference to that here. And the majority of motorists speed. The speed limit's 30 miles an hour. Most motorists go at way in excess of that, some at ridiculous speeds, 50, 60 miles an hour. Every one of the neighbours that I've spoken to have said, yes, we've seen it. We've seen it, and we see it in a regular occurrence. So, basically what the gap assessment seems to be, it seems to say that pedestrians don't have a right of way. You've got to assess a gap of speeding traffic. It's a risk assessment you're taking, because that's what it is. Is it safe for me to cross? Well, maybe it is. That's what we're saying. It's a risk assessment. As a pedestrian, I don't have right of way. I've got to take a risk and decide whether the oncoming speeding traffic, whether I've got enough time to get across. And sometimes you get halfway across and then you've got to run because there's somebody bearing down on you, and they actually accelerate towards you. And it's not just me, it's the experience of everybody I've spoken to. So, brings me on to the gap assessment survey of September the 9th, 2021. Now, that was during the COVID pandemic. The COVID job retention scheme was still there. Was still in place. Lots of people were working from home. In fact, my household with 3 adults working from home. So the traffic was a lot lighter then. I don't say. I mean, I don't. You know, obviously, I'm not an expert, so the figures for me, were, not easy to extrapolate. But I don't know if it estimated the speed of any of the cars. Not sure. But I did see it said the minimum gap was 8 seconds. 8 seconds to get across the road if you've got a disability. Brilliant. So, for many years, South Lanarkshire Council officials and elected representatives have ignored pleas from the Westwood community asking for pedestrian safety measures to be introduced, have consistently passed the buck to Police Scotland. That's what you get. Police Scotland, contact the police. This is a dishonest approach, as it should be well understood that Police Scotland do not have the resources to monitor Westwood Hill 24/7. But that's what we're saying. Phone the police. No, I've done that actually, because I thought, OK, I'll do that. See somebody flying past Westwood Hill, maybe 60 miles an hour. You phone the police, you can't get through. 40-minute waiting time. You go onto their website and you report it, nobody gets back to you. Done that 3 times and so have other people. But the police can't. How can the police, how can the police monitor that road 24/7? It's impossible. But that's what we're told to do. Contact the police. Now, pedestrian safety should be a vital component of road planning engineering, rather than not even being an afterthought. I mean, Westwood Hill, as far as I remember, it's been resurfaced at least twice in the past 20 years. That was an opportunity to put a few bricks down to slow traffic, but no, not even an afterthought. Now, South Lanarkshire Council must be more inclusive and work with and listen to the local community. The first paragraph on this document, South Lanarkshire Council talks about working with other organisations. It mentions other council services, Scottish Government and Police Scotland. Doesn't mention the Westwood Hill community. Doesn't mention Westwood Hill Community Council. So basically, nothing to do with us, is it? We just live there. We have to cross the road and risk our lives.
Sorry, just before you go, and I think we've only got about a minute left now of the 10 minutes. Yeah. So just
OK,
make you aware of
thanks, appreciate it.
So you had a minute left.
Sorry?
You had a minute left if you wanted to.
All right, OK, yeah. And just to say that, so you don't, what I was saying was that so the council, by its own admission, doesn't speak to the local community, doesn't listen or ask even for their concerns, their lived experiences. That's nothing irrelevant from what I can see. Now, the council, the very first paragraph, I think it is, or one of the first paragraphs, it talks about the criteria and talks about money. We all know that, the budget, we all know that. So what I'm asking for is do it on an incremental basis. We've been asking for probably at least a decade. But spend a wee bit of money putting down some traffic calming measures. This year, next financial year, spend a wee bit more, and do it on a gradual, incremental basis. But please don't keep saying every year we can't, we won't, because we don't have any money. I mean, I think that those excuses have just kind of run out of steam. OK, sorry. Just one quick point.
I'll give you that last point, yeah, thanks.
Sorry?
I'll give you the one last point.
What I would say is, so I'm talking about pedestrians, but what I would point out is that drivers parked on Westwood Hill find pulling out into speeding traffic quite perilous as well. Because again, it's a blind hill, and you look in the mirror, you think it's okay to pull out, and all of a sudden, woof, someone's coming down on top of you. OK. Well, thank you
for that. No, it was. Thank you for that. So I'll now ask our colleagues from the Roads Department to respond to any of the comments that you've made.
Thank you, Chair. The petition that's been submitted to the Council and before committee today is essentially a lot of our core business. The points raised do replicate numerous similar inquiries that are made to yourselves as local councillors and also to yourselves as officers as part of the Roads Transportation and Fleet Service. Please note that the responses given in the sort of first 4 bullet points of the papers reflect that of the Road Traffic Act, whereby local authorities are obliged to carry out studies into the cause of road accidents and take appropriate measures to prevent accidents. As such, we undertake a proactive approach in reducing casualties, and this is reflected in the committee approved policies and actions in relation to the current local transport strategy. It should be noted that these tie into targets set out by Scotland's within Scotland's National Transport Strategy, as well as how these will be delivered. Measures the Council adopt in relation to casualty reduction have been presented and endorsed by the Council's Road Safety Forum as well. These outline our annual assessment process that identifies potential locations, sections of road or areas where detailed assessment is merited, which can then lead to measures and initiatives being provided to reduce the frequency and severity of casualties. This approach has resulted in the ongoing reduction of casualties in South Lanarkshire over a number of years, and this was recognised in 2022, where the Scottish Transport Award category for most effective in road safety, traffic management and enforcement category was won by the Council. In relation to Westwood Road, there have been 0 injury accidents in the latest 3-year period. In context, our annual assessment for casualty reduction has identified approximately 120 locations throughout South Lanarkshire where detailed analysis is required for consideration of measures or initiatives to reduce accidents. The locations are a mixture of cluster locations, sections of rural roads where accident rates are higher than the national average, and areas within built-up areas. Given this, the resources are allocated towards a small number of locations. This approach has been proven to be successful in reducing casualties in South Lanarkshire, and for the period from 2004 through to 2021, these have reduced from over 1,000 to just under 300. It's therefore, if there was a justified need to implement traffic calming measures in Westwood Hill and the surrounding area, then these schemes would be developed. The road itself is just over a mile long, and to implement engineering measures, they would require to be provided roughly every 60 metres to comply with design standards, and a high-level estimate for those types of works would be in the region of £200,000. As members of the committee, you'll be aware that we're entering a difficult financial period when it comes to resources. Funding for current financial year casualty reduction measures is we currently have funding identified of £150,000, and we're currently awaiting on funding from Transport Scotland to see what will be available for increasing that. So in summary, in terms of casualty reduction, the resources are being allocated to locations that have got a much higher priority based on casualty reduction. In terms of traffic speed, I would say that all road users have the responsibility for road safety. Obviously, there's the highway code as well as traffic laws, and these are in place for all road users' benefit. I would draw the committee's attention to point 6, where Police Scotland have given a commitment to continue to undertake enforcement action on this section of road. In addition to that, I would also make reference to our own policy, where we're trying to encourage 20 mph speeds as being a way of ensuring that built-up areas have an appropriate speed limit. And we're currently in the process of undertaking an assessment through funding from Transport Scotland that will potentially identify that within built-up areas, the speed limit will reduce from 30 to 20 miles per hour. And again, that could be in place in certain parts of South Lanarkshire as early as 2025. In terms of traffic volume, the next 4 points in the paper refer to traffic volume and road capacity. And just to be a bit clearer on the text that's provided in the paper, we have undertaken various traffic counts over recent years as part of an exercise looking at traffic modelling for the full town of East Kilbride. And parts of the town are separated up into zones. With that information, we can establish the traffic movements to and from the Westwood Hill area And these have remained relatively static over recent years. In terms of controlled pedestrian crossings, obviously reference has been made to the gap acceptance methodology, and this is essentially national criteria that is applied by many local authorities to identify where controlled crossings could be justified. And that process in itself, it does consider the speed of pedestrians crossing the road itself and what facilities are in and around the area that would generate associated with desire lines, etc. And a lot of that assessment process, as I said, we get requests for those throughout South Lanarkshire, and again we have a look and see where priorities are, so to ensure that resources can be allocated appropriately. There was some other comments made in relation to the timing of the survey for the gap survey, and we've already gave a commitment to undertake a further assessment, and that will be undertaken and will be scheduled in the coming months. And in terms of working with organisations, I would point out to the committee that as part of East Kilbride Active Travel Study, all members of the community councils, local elected members were given the opportunity to provide comment through 2 consultation exercises for that process. And a lot of those points in relation to safety were taken on board with regards to the priorities that have been identified and ways to create an environment where cycling and walking is more attractive than what it is at the moment. I would also point out that in terms of our current local transport strategy, we're just about to appoint a consultant to take forward our next transport strategy. And again, there'll be opportunities to review the existing policies and actions that are in the current document, compare those to those emerging through national and regional transport strategies. And again, there'll be an opportunity for all members of the community to comment and be part of that consultation process for that document. I'll pass you back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me. Mr McFadden, is there anything you want to raise with the roads there?
Does, when you're monitoring accident figures, that kind of thing, do you monitor near misses? When someone's almost been run over and have to run across the road to avoid that, is that monitored?
What we monitor is injury accidents, and that if those injury accidents are collated by Police Scotland, and there's relevant documentation that Police Scotland need to complete in regards to injury accidents, and that's the data that we get access to and use that for the basis of taking priorities. In terms of near misses and stuff like that, that's very subjective. You can probably step out of this building, go and stand in the street corner, and you can have a look and see how people use the road network. An example I've given at the Road Safety Forum was a situation where I was driving from my own house to my dad's house, and within a short period of about 2 miles, I could count experiences of people driving badly, crossing the road badly, nearly coming into conflict with others. So it's a very, very difficult thing to quantify as well, because one person's near miss might not be another person's near miss as well. And I think when it comes to what our obligations are, it's all coming down to looking at casualty reduction. Until we get to a point where there's 0 accidents occurring on the road network, we will always strive to reduce the casualties resulted from accidents for very obvious reasons. Okay,
thank you. Mr Fadgen, any more questions?
Observation is that, again, I spoke to a lot of people, and just about everybody I spoke to has either seen or been involved in a near miss. When I'm talking about near misses, I'm talking about crossing Westwood Hill and a car approaching you, it's going so fast, all 4 wheels are actually off the ground. Common occurrence. Now, in wider industry, obviously there's a statutory responsibility to report accidents, but also near misses. But there's no way near misses are considered. And yeah, you're right, it's a personal experience. It's a bloody frightening personal experience, let me tell you. And it's something that happens on a regular basis in Westwood Hill. And as I say, talk to anybody, and I've talked to lots of people, we've all experienced near misses, and it's a regular occurrence. And in terms of the figures that we've got, again, it brought out laughter in people that the traffic in Westwood Hill hasn't increased. Now, everybody knows it has. East Kilbride has grown massively. We've got massive sprawling private estates. Most of those have got at least 2 cars per household. Facing Westwood Hill, where I live in Westwood Hill, there's Newlands Road, and there's a new, well, it's been there for a few years, private development. And I've looked, and probably most of those houses have got at least 2 cars, so I estimate that's roughly 50 cars alone added that come down Newlands Road. So where the figures come from in terms of to suggest that Westwood Hill hasn't become busier over the last 20 years is quite frankly laughable. A couple of questions about the gap assessment. Who conducted it? I asked this but never got a reply. Who conducted the gap assessment? What training have they had? Who extrapolated the figures from the gap assessment? What training have they had?
Can our Roads Department ask that specific question?
Yeah, in terms of traffic volumes, I can advise that as an authority we've got about 70 locations throughout South Lanarkshire where we automatically count traffic on an hourly, minute, day-by-day basis. And the fluctuation is, when it comes to traffic volume, it generally correlates to how well the economy is doing. So, for example, there was steady increase year on year, more or less year on year up to about 2008, and then there was economic issues around about that time, and traffic volumes fell. They started to then creep up again over a period of time to roughly just before the pandemic, where they were reaching similar levels, not quite at the same levels, but similar. And then obviously with the pandemic, again, that's had an impact on people's travel behaviours, as has been referenced. At this moment in time, when the last time I looked at the traffic data, it seems to be that we're now at a point where the daily flows of traffic are similar to what they were pre-pandemic. In terms of the gap acceptance, we commissioned a specialist company called Traxis to undertake those particular counts, and they are one of a number of specialist companies that the council use, who go out, collate the information on site, and then obviously utilise that in the way it's been being presented, which you have all saw a reference to with the email that was passed around last night.
Okay, thank you. If you've got no further questions, Mr McFadden, I'll... sorry.
Traffic. A question I've got is, why is it that school crossing patrol person told me, and it's interesting, that's something I didn't know, that I don't know if any of you have noticed on the sign that they carry, the round sign that they carry, there's a black bar on it, which I hadn't taken much notice of. That's actually, apparently, that's a blackboard. And the school crossing patrol person's got a piece of chalk. And what they do then is, if there's a driver speeding, they write the registration number of that driver and contact the police. Now, a school crossing patrol person who I spoke to, who by the way signed the petition, because she was so angry what she has to put up with, she told me that she can't record, she's unable to record the registration numbers of speeding drivers because there's far too many. And she would spend her whole shift, which I think is about an hour, writing down registration numbers.
Okay, thank you. I'll take this, unless you want to respond to that one, I'll take questions and comments from the councillors. Mary?
Thank you, Chair. Can can ask the officers the demographics and the population in that area. And the point that you made, Stuart, was people crossing the road badly. Are we taking into account the demographics and the ageing population? I'm 70 this year. I went up yesterday to look at this road and I would struggle to cross from one end to the other without stopping because of my health issues. So it would be interesting to know what the population demographics are in that area now.
Sorry, I'll let Stuart answer that one first.
I don't have specific demographic and population information with me today. However, what I will say is that when it comes to crossing assessments, the science behind it it sort of came about in the late 1960s, early 70s, where Traffic Research Laboratory, as part of the Department of Transport, was looking at how all engineering measures could be improved on the road network itself. And they did various surveys. They went into a lot of detail and calculated what the average walking speed of the population was. And that equates to something in the region of about 1.2, 1.3 metres per second. So in engineering terms, that's a figure that's in our mind when we're calculating how long it takes someone to physically cross a road. Admittedly, some people will be faster, some people will be slower. In terms of when we're looking at potentially implementing measures, what we look for is how are people currently crossing the road? Could that be made safer in some particular way? And a lot of the factors that we look at will come down to the age of the population, vulnerable road users, whether that be old or young. All of these are considerations that we consider when we're looking at sections of the road network.
Okay, thank you. I see Robert Brown's requesting to speak, but I'll let Mr McFadden just come in as he...
It's interesting, the demographics. I can tell you that because I live there, I'll be 70 in a few months. It's a sad reflection on society that most of the homes in going up and down Westwood Hill and flats across the road from the opposite side are owner occupied. And sadly, most of the people who can afford to own their own home these days are elderly. So most of the people that live up and down Westwood Hill are in their 70s and 80s. And that takes me to a point about the gap assessment. If you look at the gap assessment that was conducted in September 2021, it tells you that despite this demographic of elderly people, not one OAP crossed the road in 12 hours. That's what I can see from the figures. Not one. Which most people would again find, I showed that they found that they were incredulous. Not one old person crossed the road.
Okay, thanks.
How do you, and also, just sorry, beg your pardon, just one further point. And how do they identify an OEP to put it on their, because we're talking about a spreadsheet that says it's safe to cross the road. That's what it is, it's a spreadsheet. So how do you decide and tick a box to who's an OEP?
Stuart? Sorry, Robert, just think that warrants an answer from the roads. No, sorry. Stuart, answer first. All right, sorry.
Okay, thanks, Chair. In terms of the survey itself, the way that most surveys are undertaken is via some form of video. And from that, there is obviously an estimation given to how old people are. Some people it will be quite easy, and others it might not be as easy. But it's there as a guide. It's not there as a rule. And the one thing to bear in mind when I compare that survey to other surveys that we've undertaken, the number of people crossing in general is very, very small when you compare it to busier areas throughout the council area as well.
Okay, thank you. Robert, thanks for your patience.
All right, no, thank you very much. Thanks very much, Mr McFadden, for your presentation this morning. Some quite interesting points. I know there's been a lot of work to bring it about and bring the petition forward. I think the difficulty you've got, isn't it, that there's a whole series of locations in all our areas where there are issues similar to what you've got on Westwood Road, of speed, of volume of traffic, of crossing the road, all that sort of thing. And rightly or wrongly, it's done by the council with limited money on the basis of primarily the number of injury accidents that have been in the area. And that's for the very good reason there's a positive proof, if you like, that there's been an actual problem that's led to a death or an injury over that period. So I think the challenge for you is really other different things about Westwood Hill that you'd like to bring to the committee that, if you like, make them different from these other locations. Yeah, I mean, I know you've mentioned one or two. You mentioned the Blind Summit, for example. Is there anything else you want to say on that?
Yeah, actually go and look at the road.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You did, yeah. And you did it quite rightly. And you, I think, felt the same as I do.
Sorry, we can't hear you when you turn round. Couldn't hear you when you turn round to speak to Councillor Donnelly.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Sorry. I couldn't hear you when you turned around to speak to Councillor Donnelly because you weren't speaking into the microphone.
Right, okay, sorry. So, yeah, so Councillor Donnelly, although she took the time, and I appreciate that, and I thank her very much for doing that. Anybody that actually takes the time to look at that road and look at the hill can see the problem. Now, we talk about budget. We've been hearing that for at least 10 years. Are we going to be saying that the same thing for the next 10 years? Is this what? And this is where the anger comes in, the frustration comes in. You can probably see I'm angry, I'm bloody angry, and I'm not going to go away, right? And I'll make sure people are held to account for their inaction, and I'm not alone.
Still asking though, the root point really for the petition, whether there's anything else you want to say about the actual. I mean, I appreciate looking at the location. We can look at a lot of locations across the area. What in particular are you finding yourself on here? You've mentioned the Blind Summit, which I think is quite an important point. You've mentioned obviously the speed of the traffic, which, to be quite honest, I mean, I know in my ward you could get that across literally every significant street. There'll be complaints about speed, so that's an issue. So are there particular things beyond that, like have you done any kind of survey of people's information about non-injury accidents, accident bumps that have taken place because of this? Is there any information about that you can give to the committee, for example?
Anecdotal information about I can tell you about a neighbour of mine that lives just further down Westwood Hill. He's in his mid-80s, his health is poor, and he told me, I don't cross the road, it's too dangerous, right? Far too dangerous. I walk down to the bottom of the hill and cross. However, in the winter, across the pavement on my side of the road and his side of the road, there's a large sheet of ice. Right? We've got Westwood Hill, we've got grassy areas and runoff. Right? This has been reported to the council. In fact, I've got a reference number for it. I've got photographs of it as well. Anyway, a large, thick sheet of ice that sits there. Now, he knows this is there. You can't cross it. You can't. You have to go onto the grass verge to cross it. So he did that. And as soon as he stepped on the grass verge, he fell. Right? So what's he supposed to do? He can't cross the road in the winter. Or he can't cross the road opposite his house. He's got to walk down the hill. And then there's this barrier of ice that's there quite a lot of the time. So mobility scooters, I've mentioned that. I mean, I don't know if I've got a lot more to add. I mean, I could go through and pull this report apart, paragraph point by point, because it's laughable. It's the same trotted out excuses we get time after time. And I think the word science was used. I would use the word faux science. We use a spreadsheet to say, even if we accept that it was done in, the one done in Westwood Hill was done on the 9th of September. So I'd be seriously suggesting that a spreadsheet done one day in a year over a 12-hour period can estimate whether I'm going to cross the road and somebody's going to fly over the hill at 60 miles an hour at me. This spreadsheet can actually do that. That's amazing. I mean, it must have cost the council an awful lot of money if a spreadsheet's capable of doing that. Might have been better to actually put down some traffic engineering, road traffic calming measures rather than spend money on a spreadsheet like that.
Sorry, a couple of other questions, if I may. I mean, there's been a mention made there of the ice problem. I don't know if that's been something that could be further looked into, separate from the petition, if you like. In addition to that, I wonder if there's anything. I mean, you've mentioned it's a mile long, the hill and all that. I take the point about the where on the hill are the locations that are problematic. Some mention of the blind summit and so forth. Are there more minor measures that could be taken that are relevant to this at all, of signage or things of that kind?
If you can, Stuart. Yep.
I think it comes down to how we allocate our resources. At the end of the day, it is finite, and as we look to taking forward schemes, what is the basis of that? And it all comes back to what is the justification for it? And has been mentioned, what's the difference of this road to another road, the next road up, etc., etc. And that's the mind games that really keep me awake at night. I want zero accidents on the road. How do I achieve that? If we had available funding, then yeah, we would look to take schemes to various other parts of the road network as well. And it is very difficult when we've got a significant number of locations. I mentioned roughly 120 that we are constantly analysing and assessing. When we implement schemes, we assess how well they've been done, how they've affected casualties, and if there's things to be learned from that as well. And that's just one aspect. That's just engineering. We do have other initiatives as well, where we target publicity on young car drivers, for example, or preschool, school-age kids, etc. So it's not just us that do that. There are partner organisations such as the Police, Fire and Rescue, Transport Scotland, for example. There's national campaigns that we assist with. We've got our own campaigns as well, work that we do throughout any given calendar year. So it isn't necessarily if you throw engineering measures at it, it will solve a problem. That isn't always the case.
A list of priorities where there's been a proven record of a number of injury accidents, and really you'd have to kind of like jump that particular queue, wouldn't you, to be able to change the thing in that regard. It's always open for re-examination, isn't it, if there's a change of circumstance on that. Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to respond to Councillor Brown.
No, I think, yeah,
No, sorry, I was talking to Stuart. I'll let you respond after, Stuart.
Yeah, Councillor Brown's exactly correct in that statement. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Mr McFadden.
I've written the word here. Shame. It's shameful. The response we get year after year is absolutely shameful and disgusting. I think South Lanarkshire Council needs to change its priorities then. Again, the word science. So it's not very scientific to say, well, there's somebody been injured on that road, we'll deal with that road. There's a word being proactive. Now, as I said before, anybody that looks at Westwood Hill knows it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. Could be today, hopefully not. Could be tomorrow. Somebody's going to be seriously injured. Now, the science that I use is my observation, and I've lived there for 25 years. My neighbours all say the same thing. So we're going to wait until somebody's killed or injured, because it's inevitable. And then we're going to maybe say we might spend a bit of money, maybe.
Okay, thanks. I see Councillor Donnelly and Councillor Logan want to speak, but also Colin, maybe you want to respond to these specific points before I go to the councillors? No problem. Councillor Donnelly, I think you were first.
No, I've came in, so let Eileen, and then I'll come in after Eileen.
Okay. Councillor Logan.
Thank you. I was taking some notes. Now, could I ask for clarification for myself? Did you say, I understood that the first assessment was 2021 and that was pandemic time, so therefore maybe a bit skewed. Did I pick that up and write it down properly, that you've accepted that that was 2021, so you are due to do another one in that area? Did I get that correct?
Stuart.
Yeah, that is correct. It's our intention to undertake redo the survey sometime in the coming months.
Sorry, just so I can jump in. as Mr McFadden sort of highlighted, is it possible to have someone on the site when that survey is getting done rather than just relying on equipment recording information? I know I've seen in the past people stand at roads with the clickers. And
there's different methods of doing it, but they all rely on observation.
Yeah.
And those observations, whether it's from people on the ground or over a video link, or it's recorded in some way. So all that data is collated. So we can certainly speak to the consultant that we'll appoint and see how they can ensure that any concerns that the local community have are considered when they're viewing the section of the road itself.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Councillor Donnelly now. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Logan.
But could I say that I have great sympathy for the plight of the people in the area that Mr McFadden is representing today, and I'm sure, like every other councillor in this council, at the minute I am sitting with 6 different complaints, which is virtually mirroring what is being said today, and I'm quite certain that I wouldn't be wrong in saying that everybody will be in the same boat. Mr McFadden's petition is the first one up, and I've no doubt there'll be others that's going to now follow. What I have going to say as well is that although South Lanarkshire Council is the end product, there is also a responsibility of Police Scotland and various different people to ensure if there's bad speeding and different things like that. So there is other organisations who are also needing to be petitioned or looked at. And just this week I have told two different lots of people that yes, I will bring it here, or it has been here, but also, and I think he did mention his MSP in his when he was giving his speech to us today. And I have been telling people, well, I think now we really need to step this up a bit and start to petition where the problem actually is, because there is a shortage of money. I sat in here a month ago and the police were actually telling us in a meeting here that will be cut. Community policing's getting cut. A whole lot of different things is getting cut. So there is shortages all over the place. So you're not going to get police coming to, I understand all of that, police coming, but we are really needing to step it up and take it back to where it should go. And this isn't political with a capital P. I'm only saying that if the money doesn't come from the source to us, then we are hampered. And I do appreciate what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying, truthfully. And I know that, as I say, it's all over South Lanarkshire Council. But again, it really does need to be stepped up a wee bit, because it's a growing problem and is a very big problem. And if the criteria that we work to is that, then that's fine. But if the people are saying, well, that's not working, then we need to go back to the source. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Councillor Donnelly.
Eileen did ask the question I was going to ask in terms of a survey is due again. I thought that in my reading and my understanding. But the other point that I'd like to ask you, Stuart, is like I stay off Burnbank Road and there's quite a few aisles on Burnbank Road. What is the criteria when these aisles are put in? Because when I went up to Westwood Hill, Mr McFadden was correct. There was no aisles where I would appreciate, right, and I'm speaking as a person that would be walking, I would appreciate if there was an aisle to cross that length, that road, because I would never make it to the other side without cars passing me. So I would be putting myself at risk. And an aisle, I know that I do it in Burnbank Road. I go halfway across till the traffic's cleared and then I can cross again the rest of the road. But I'm not sure of the criteria for that, Stuart. So if
Stuart, if you could, please.
It falls into the city gap acceptance methodology where you have desire lines identified across a particular section of road. The volume of pedestrians is such where there's significant movements and they're having significant difficulty in crossing the road in terms of gaps in traffic. And also it might not always be physically able to introduce a pedestrian refuge island in the middle of a road, because that's dependent on how much road width is physically available to undertake that. Other consideration would be, do you widen the road to cater for a refuge island, or do you narrow the road to make that crossing time less? So there's quite a bit of consideration that's given. It's not like when I first started work, there was a mathematical formula, PV squared, where you had the number of pedestrians crossing at a point, multiplied it by the vehicle squared, and it churned out a number at the end of that, and depending on what that number was would be dependent on the type of feature. That methodology was essentially put to one side in favour of gap acceptance, because there's more flexibility within the gap acceptance methodology to put in crossing features, whether that's a controlled crossing or an uncontrolled crossing. So I hope I've explained that.
I think so, yeah. I've got a couple of comments to make, if I may. The first one, we were talking about near misses, and I can understand the difficulty in reporting a near miss because it can be subjective. Now, I know that in the construction industry or a work environment, you have somebody that you can report a near miss to, whereas out in the general public, how does that happen? I don't know whether the roads department can, take that on board and say, around there saying, report this if you have seen such and such. The other thing is traffic accidents where there's not been any injuries or fatalities. Is that also recorded? Because you might have an area where you have a lot of small collisions that don't result in any injury, but the number of those, it only takes an increase in speed or a car out of position to make that non-injury accident to be an injury accident. And I think maybe that all accidents should be taken into consideration, maybe a different weighting to non-injury ones. I don't know if that's something that can be taken on board. Also, I think if there is another assessment on Westwood Hill Road, I would think that it would be better to have people on the ground doing the assessment, and it might even be as part of that assessment. And again, it's something to consider is that you speak to households on the road, just to get a better flavour of what it is there as well. So I don't know if you want to come back to me on that one. Thanks.
Yeah, just very briefly, in terms of what the police are obliged to record, in previous years they used to record non-injury accidents, and again that data was available to us. However, what they're legislatively bound to record is injury accidents. We were, I'm going to say, fortunate from the perspective that Strathclyde Police, as they were known at the time, actually recorded non-injury accidents, but other police authorities throughout the UK didn't. So what we have done and continue to do, if there's evidence of there being non-injury accidents, we have a look at that evidence and we consider that as part of our annual assessment process as well.
Okay, thanks. And the other points that are raised?
In terms of
the next assessment?
Sorry, yes, on-site survey, yes, certainly we'll take that on board, yeah, and we'll ensure that there's a person or people on site at that time. Okay,
we've got Graham Scott wants to speak. It's remotely, so he'll be on the screen.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I thank Mr McFadden for coming along today and obviously putting his case in such a strong manner. and can I have total sympathy for the plight, what he said about Westwood Hill, because as an East Kilbride councillor myself, I could give a list of 5 or 6 roads in my ward, as every elected member here could, where there is an almost identical problem. But the bigger point I want to make in terms of the remit of this committee is that I wish today the elected members could have maybe had a representative of Police Scotland here, so we could ask Police Scotland about their policing opus moderandi around Westwood Hill, and their what reports or what policing means they have for getting speedsters off the road. It's a problem all over East Kilbride. I accept what Mr McFadden says, but it's an East Kilbride-wide problem. But I would love if we'd had the opportunity to compel Police Scotland to come along, because at the end of the day, policing is a criminal offence. As someone who sat on the bench as a Justice of the Peace, speeding is a criminal offence. The police are the only people with the powers of arrest in our society. Therefore, at the end of the day, when criminal offences are perpetrated, it's the responsibility of Police Scotland. And as my colleague, Councillor Logan, quite eloquently said, we had a presentation from the police about a month ago saying that they have financial problems. And I accept the bigger point that we have to go to Edinburgh, that all parts of public services need more resources. But as I say, I have every sympathy with Mr McFadden, but that could be about a number of other streets in East Kilbride. And I wish the structure of this committee could have been that we could compel somebody from Police Scotland to come here. And maybe it's a weakness in the way the Petitions Committee is structured, that we can't have someone from Police Scotland here so that elected members can ask, hopefully, pertinent questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Scott. I think that's something that maybe we could look into, depending on the petitions that come in.
I don't know if maybe Geraldine wants to. Would it be possible to invite Police Scotland along to petitions committees?
I would imagine it would be.
It would only be appropriate to invite Police Scotland if they were directly referred to in a petition itself, to allow them to answer any questions. If they are not, in which case they would have been invited in advance to put forward a submission as well, and they could be questioned on that as part of the committee. Otherwise, it wouldn't be appropriate to invite them here. However, East Kilbride Area Committee, if they have concerns, can raise any questions with the police representative who attends the Area Committee.
Okay, thank you for that. Sorry, I was just asking a bit of a procedural question there. Mr Park, you want to jump in?
Thanks, Councillor Fulton. And just kind of to pick up on Councillor Scott's point there.
Can you speak up a wee bit louder?
Sorry, apologies. Councillor Scott's point there about the police involvement, and obviously Geraldine's answered that. Police Scotland are involved in the Road Safety Forum. They're regular attendees to that. So they do guide and direct some of the development of policy. And as Stuart highlighted there, through the local transport strategy exercise, where we're reviewing all policies across the council, that will inevitably come up as we progress through the next kind of year. Stuart and myself also are part of the Lanarkshire Road Safety Governance Board, where we meet with senior police officials and also colleagues from North Lanarkshire as well. So sadly, this conversation today is all too common. You know, every other day we'll begin an understandable, letter or email from a community raising concerns. And again, I admire and I share Mr McFadden's frustration that nothing's getting done here, because I want to do more. As the head of service here, I started in local government 30 years ago in the Acts Investigation and Prevention Unit in Strathclyde, which gave me a flavour of what happens out there on the road network. People were being seriously killed, and I was part of a team that were driving forward improvements. That gave me the passion to do what I'm doing today. And despite not fully kind of sharing Mr McFadden's views on how our service operates, the passion that Sandy and Stuart show in terms of carrying out their day jobs to secure additional investment to the council, to have strategies and policies in place that get more money in is admirable. I would love to be able to prioritise investment, road safety crossings, more school crossing patrollers, traffic calming, improve lighting, improve winter maintenance, but I can't. I don't have the funding for it. As Stuart highlighted, we've got over 120 locations that do meet the policy for intervention, and we're doing 5% of them a year. So we're not even doing what I have to do. Legally, I am responsible for road safety. As head of service, head of the Roads Authority in South Lanarkshire, I've got a 50% share with the police. I'm not doing my job as best as I can, but I'm doing it within the best I can within the resources that we have available. So I do, again, admire and Mr McFadden for coming along and sharing that. If we can do anything, and I'm happy that Stuart and Sandy continue some dialogue, as Councillor Brown says there, we'll do another survey. Is there anything we can do? Could we put in a sign or something like that, just to highlight something's a little bit different? If we can do it, we will. But we are curtailed by the lack of resources to do what we have to do. But we'll continue to have dialogue, we'll continue to do the additional surveys, we'll continue to engage with Police Scotland about the enforcement activity that are going to take. But this could be any street in South Lanarkshire, and there are at least, as Councillor Logan, as Councillor Scott has highlighted, each councillor at the committee today has probably got about 4 or 5 locations that they'll be writing to me shortly on, or have already done. So, thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any more people. Oh, sorry, Mary jumped in there.
Based on what Colin and Stuart have been saying, point 12, the Quality Impact Assessment and Consultation Arrangements, it says here that the report does not introduce a new policy, function or strategy, or recommend a change to any existing policy, function or strategy, and therefore no impact assessment is required. I hear and I understand what that's saying, but based on the demographics and based on the assessment that's going to be coming, is there points from this discussion that we've had today, could they be included in that assessment going forward? That would be appreciated. Thanks, Stuart.
Oh, Geraldine wants to come in just now.
Yes. The reason the report doesn't have a reference to an equality impact assessment is because there was no need to do it for this particular report. Obviously, if in the future community and enterprise were considering making changes to the road, etc., or any road, at that point you would do an equality impact assessment, or if you were changing your policy, you would do it at that point. But for this committee, there isn't a need to do it.
Okay, thanks. I've got Councillor Toner want to speak.
Thank you. Thanks. Again, I've got a street outside my house that in my ward that this could mirror. This could be the exact same conversation that we're having here. I'm just wondering, after the petition that's been brought forward, we've got we used to have a pavements thing, and the people in the local community could write, and there was a separate fund, and they could write to the council and suggest pavements that could be doing with upgrading and things like that. I'm just wondering if we're sort of trying to go more proactive and doing like the sort of 20-minute communities and the walk to schools and the less carbon emissions and less cars and things, if it's possible, because I appreciate the lack of funding in the roads department, but if the funding could possibly come from not another source, but from a different, get the money in a different way, and the local communities then get the opportunity to say, look, this is what we need, this is our community, this is what we need, and possibly take it from that perspective, as opposed to, so the communities are asking for what the communities need, and it's not necessarily facts and figures from a road safety point of view. The other thing that coming sort of around on that one is, I mean, the amount of people that are actually crossing the road, certainly in the area that I'm in Hamilton, the feedback from the community is that we don't cross the road because it's not safe. So when you guys come to do your assessment of how many people cross the road, the people that are crossing the road are the ones that absolutely have to, because everybody else goes in their car or takes a long way around because it's just too dangerous. So possibly as part of your next assessment, if you speak to people and ask them, would you cross the road here if there was a crossing? Would this cut your journey time? Would this mean if there was a crossing here that you would be less likely to take your vehicle if you could cross the road safely, as opposed, and take the more proactive route, as opposed to saying, oh well, there's only A, B and C cross the road, so that's all that we need, and it doesn't call for anything, and take the people that actually would cross the road if they deemed that it was safe to do so. Thanks.
Thanks. Colin? Is it not working?
No, that's us. Thanks, Chair. Just Councillor Tona, picking up your last point there. Perhaps one day we will get to a point where we can look at where people would like infrastructure, but just now we're at a point where we're having to prioritise where people need it just now. So it's not easy to if you ask MD, would you like a pedestrian crossing there? They're going to say yes. So who do you ask? Do you ask at this location? Do you ask at 100 metres up? Everyone is going to want to see improvements, and I would love to give them, as I said earlier on, but I can't. In terms of your first point, I think you're referring to participatory budgeting, which came in for I think the last couple of years, last financial years. We've benefited from a fund to prioritise footway maintenance. 2 years ago, I think it was footways and carriageways. There was a percentage of funding identified, and last year was footways. That was very much still evidence-led. So we contacted communities and we said, where would you like this level of investment? And we asked them, do we prioritise in residential areas? Do we prioritise in kind of business districts? Do we call it any other type of footways? And that gave us a theme. So, for example, the top themes, I think for all of them, were residential roads. It was very much evidence-led after that, where we went in and we identified on a prioritisation exercise, similar to what Stuart's talked about of the 120 locations, that we would take 1, 2, 5, 8, 9, 10 schemes down that fell under residential estates, and that's where we invested it. So it very much was welcomed. We understood what the communities were looking for, but it was then subsequently implemented on an evidence basis. So if we did it, let's say there was a few million pounds identified for road safety over and above what we've currently got, and we went out to our communities, I can guarantee the top theme would be pedestrian crossings, the second theme would be traffic calming, and the third theme would be school crossing patrollers or something like that. How do we then pick the schemes? We would pick the schemes from the locations Stuart's identified. So we've got 120 of them. 5% of that is 6 or 7 or something like that. Where accidents are happening. This particular location has no accidents, so it doesn't feature on that. So it's a good idea. I'd welcome additional money, but I wouldn't make a difference to this particular scheme or its the ability to do something on it in the short term. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't see anybody else requesting to speak, so I think I might ask both Mr McFadden and Stuart, give them a couple of minutes to sum up, if you wish. Are you happy to do that, Mr McFadden? I appreciate your time being here today and the first time you've addressed a committee, so I'll just 2 or 3 minutes. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. So to sum up, we've got Westwood Hill, we've got a blind summit, traffic, speed up and down it. Almost everybody is well over the speed limit. Some insanely so. Police Scotland don't have the resources to be there 24/7. They're very under-resourced, like most organisations. I mean, to put the blame solely, or to put the onus solely on Police Scotland is disingenuous. From my point of view, the council officials are hiding behind figures. The 5% figure we're talking about, so roughly is that going to be 120 roads that need addressed? Is it going to take 10 years to get to that before we even look at Westwood Hill? Told the same thing time and time again, year after year. It's just absolutely shocking. So for me, policy has to change. People need to change. People need to go. And whether that's council officials need to go, whether it's elected representatives need to go, we'll make that happen.
Okay, thank you. Stuart or Colin, you want to? Yep.
Thanks, Chair. I think Stuart has kind of set out the position of the service and of the wider council. And I think Mr McFadden, just in his closing statements there, highlights the scale of the challenge about why we're approaching this task the way we are. We have 120 locations. Hopefully that comes down, but even if it comes down to 100, we're doing 5% a year. It may take us 10 years, but that's where people are being killed, seriously injured, and that's where our resources are being directed. Thankfully, Westwood Hill is not experiencing that, and hopefully it doesn't. But the policy that we have developed over the years, which is identical, give or take maybe on the number of accident levels across all 32 local authorities in Scotland, it will continue to be developed. It will be continued to be brought to the Road Safety Forum for review as part of the local transport strategy. That policy will inevitably form part of the review. The consultation will be undertaken for the document as a whole, and Mr McFadden and his kind of colleagues in the community will be able to comment upon that. And I've no doubt members will have a view as well. But we do need to recognise is we need a tool. We need a tool and a mechanism to prioritise investment if we got. I need about 10 times what I have to do what I have to do before I even start considering Westwood Hill or some of the locations in Councillor Scott's ward, Councillor Toner's ward or Councillor Logan's ward as well. And I'm sure the other 30 or 40 or so councillors are out there as well. So we're enacting policy, we're following through with it. I share Mr McFadden's passion for improving road safety, but we are doing the best we can with the resources that we've got, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Just go to the item 7 on the report. Basically, the options open to the committee. So the 3 are agree that the issues raised deserve further action and agree to refer the petition to another committee, officer or organisation within with recommendations, or agree that the issue raised does not merit further action, and finally refer back to the resource with recommendations for further action. So that's 3 options open to us. My view is that if there is going to be another traffic assessment done in the area, I think that we have that assessment not just done on the roads, but also extend it out to actually speaking to residents. And again, the mechanics of that, I don't know how you would do that, but I think if you're going to do another assessment, I think we need to do more than just count crossing. We need to talk to people in the area, and I don't know if that's something that you can be done through your own department, or then you have to look at another department to collaborate with that one.
Chair, obviously we'll consider what comes out from your own proposal and the committee's decision. That is a very resource-intensive exercise for us to do, and we would potentially then have to look at doing it across the 4 streets in Councillor Scott's ward, the 4 streets in Councillor Toner's ward, when we're looking at additional. I can understand, and I'm not entirely following Mr McFadden's concern over the survey that was undertaken, but historically, yes, a survey would be undertaken with somebody sitting at the side of the road with a clicker, counting, and it would be a roads engineering student from a university. Yeah. We would get facts and figures. We're now getting a video. We're getting video footage, which is then maybe still reviewed by a student working for an organisation or somebody that's got a lot of experience. That video is then available to us to view. Myself as head of service, Stuart as engineer manager. So video footage and the technology that we've got to do, as far as I'm concerned, is much more significant and beneficial than if someone on street. I would respect the decision of the committee, but I would have serious concerns about having to go out and ask people where do they want to cross, because that is...
I'm not maybe not that, but if you have somebody from Strathclyde University, a student doing that, if there's two people there, one clicks, and if one person sees, and again, you've got a mile long, so you're not going to catch everybody. I appreciate that, but if there's a place where most people cross, they can stop and talk to the people who are crossing and ask them about the issues there. That might not have to be like a door-to-door survey, but at least, you know, if there's pedestrians out, speak to them. So rather than getting the raw statistical data that you get from the videos and the Excel sheets, you are actually then getting people's opinions and people's responses for that. And again, I do appreciate that it's resource intense, but I think maybe sometimes you damn lies in statistics. You know, statistics can tell you one thing, but it could be skewed to tell you another thing, and it might just be the case that we need a wee bit more of a human interaction on it. I'm not trying to deliberately put more pressure on the roads department, but you know, if it's something that can be considered and taken into account when we're doing the next traffic assessment on this particular road. I don't know if any other councillors have got an opinion otherwise on this. Oh, yeah, I've got. Who's first on it? Councillor Logan.
Thanks very much, Chair. If soon there's going to be another assessment done, which I had, as I say, I'd picked that up anyway earlier, then I would like and need to know, well, where is it going to come back to? Is it coming back to this Petitions Committee, or is it going to the Robert Brown chairs the, what do you call that, committee, or where are we going to go? I think rather than sit here as a Petitions Committee and on the hoof decide we should think we should do this, that or the other, we need to have careful consideration. As I said, we've all got different ones coming up, and we might be sitting, you know, in months or weeks to come, petition after petition after petition on the same subject. So we can't really tie up. We have to, I think what I'm trying to say is we need to get a consensus of what do we want to do when we go out to these assessments or whatever we're going to do. So I think that the people at the Roads Department need to come back and say, well, this is what we could do, and then it could be agreed, whether it was agreed through your committee, Robert, or would it come back to here?
Well, that's the options we've got. We can either refer back to the source with today's committees, or go back to the relevant committee for their considerations.
I know
with recommendations from today.
And I know we've got different committees where police and various people sit, but it is a wee bit unfair just to say everything should land here. They have got responsibilities. If boy racers, and which is one of the ones in my area, is boy racers speeding up and down, or as I saw at the Garrion the other night, a man did a U-turn at a bit he shouldn't have done, and by a whisker missed another car. So there's bad drivers, you know, everywhere. So I think as well, and one of the times when 2 people get injured in my ward, the police never recorded it, so that was wiped out when they came to look at an assessment on a major road. So I think I fully appreciate everything that Mr McFadden has said. It mirrors, as everybody said, things that's going on all over the place, but he brought his petition, and good and for Mr. That was good, you know, he's here. So we shouldn't really be talking about what's in my ward, it's Mr McFadden's area. But I really need to know what we're signing up for, if you know what I mean. Well,
this is what the committee's going to decide. I've got Councillor Toner and then Councillor Brown, so Helen and then Robert.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with you, but I share the concerns, so that just going for the statistics is not going to work. Again, shouldn't really be talking about my ward, but there are near misses every day, and unreported unreportable incidents when it's like just a wee clip and they just exchange insurance details and that's the end of it, and none of that's recorded. Again, I don't know how you would go about recording it, or do you know that way how you would take it into consideration. But what we don't want is in 6 months or a year time there another assessment being done, but in the meantime there's been like a really serious accident or something like that on this road or any other road that we happen to be looking at. We'd really need to look at how we're going to record the near misses. And I don't know, Mr McFadden, is your sort of main concern not what do you want from the Petitions Committee, but is your concern, do you really want a safe, like a crossing, like sort of set of pedestrian lights or a zebra crossing, or are you more concerned about the speed of the vehicles or the volume of traffic? There's a lot. There's a lot there. So, see, in an ideal scenario, what are you looking? What do you think would benefit your community most? Like, do you know what I mean? Because you could go down the sort of speed camera line and things like that as well. I think that would be quite interesting.
Me, I want to be able to cross the road safely, and I want people in my community to be able to cross the road safely. I don't want to have to gamble that I'm crossing that road, because, as I said earlier on, you're gambling. Yeah, all of the above I want, but I want pedestrian crossings, I want traffic calming, but I know that obviously we've talked. It's been said in the presentations from the Roads Committee, and I think a few of their elected representatives have said money's finite. So my suggestion is that we, as I said earlier on, we do it on a gradual basis, an incremental basis. For me, living in the area, one of the main problems is the hill. Now, what I would ask for in the first instance is some sort of traffic calming to make motorists slow down. You can't ask motorists to slow down. You can't educate them, because most people drive way, way over the speed limit. So the police can't do anything because you're under-resourced. So what I'm asking for is some simple traffic calming as you approach the brow of the hill on both sides to force motorists to slow down. Because you have to force people to slow down.
Okay, thank you for that. Robert?
I think this has been a very helpful discussion. I'm grateful to Mr McFadden for bringing the petition to us. But I think we've got to view it in terms of the Council's policy, because really at the end of the day, there are arrangements made down that have been considered before in more general strategic terms, if you like, about how you actually tackle road safety right across South Lanarkshire and try and prioritise things. Now, rightly or wrongly, I think many people have made comments about the fact that you could echo the Westwood Hill problem in numerous locations across South Lanarkshire in all our wards. That's absolutely the case. Now, there's been a number of suggestions made. I personally think the near miss thing is almost impossible to categorise. I really don't think you can base things on that. It's very anecdotal. Even if you had sort of somebody observing at particular locations, well, how do you compare that to some other location? I don't think that's doable. It may be possible to take more account of actual non-injury accidents, bumps that might have been a bit faster, but for the grace of God, blah, blah, that kind of position. And I think what we perhaps ought to do here is ask that the assessment that's to be done yet and the other observations that have come out of this, go back to the Road Safety Forum, I think is the proper place to go. You look every so often at the reports and the prioritisation of the particular locations, if you like, that this limited amount of money is able to deal with. And obviously some of the comments that on this would be relevant to that. I think I'm right in saying the Road Safety Forum has made some slight adjustments to the policy in the past, where they've been able to say, well, okay, the primary thing is the injury accidents, but we're also prepared, if there's sort of strong evidence, to look at other bits and pieces of things as well. But even so, you're still in the position of having to knock out some place where there's been a nasty accident or a number of nasty accidents in favour of some place where there hasn't been. And that's the difficult dilemma that lies behind it. So my suggestion is that all this sort of stuff goes for consideration by Colin and his colleagues to come back in due course as part of the report to the Road Safety Forum. including whatever comes out of the further assessment on the matter. And I think that's the primary way of taking it forward. Now, I know that's not satisfactory to what Mr McFadyen wants in many ways, but I think really what I'd like to try and give him is the assurance that the committee are taking these points seriously. We're looking at the things seriously. We're looking at our proper body, if you like, for looking at these things, to have a further look at the criteria and all of that, and to take account of the observations that have been made about different sorts of accidents, different sorts of locations, and all of that, and just to see if we can make any improvements in the setup.
Okay, I've got Councillor Scott and then Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can see me on the screen now. I know there's been a slight delay. Again, my view is fairly similar to Councillor Logan, Councillor Brown there, that I think you should refer it back to the Road Safety Forum. Again, I think that would be the proper place to do it, refer it back to them. If I've listened to Colin correctly.
Oh, we've lost Councillor Scott. I'll go to Councillor Donnelly just now, and hopefully when... Oh, sorry, are you back there, Councillor Scott?
Yeah, I don't know, just Councillor Brown's picture froze for about 5 seconds, and I got a picture of Councillor Brown frozen. Not unattractive, but it was stuck for 5 seconds there. I don't know what you heard of us said. I agree with Councillor Brown, Councillor Logan in the sense that I think it should refer back to the Road Safety Forum. I believe, if I listen to Colin correctly, there's a police presence on the Road Safety Forum, and that would maybe be the proper place to look at this, certainly in the light of the further survey that's going to be done and has been promised today on Westwood Hill. Again, we could have streets all over East Kilbride and so that would meet the Westwood Hill criteria. But once again, I want to thank Mr McFadyen for coming along here today and initiating what I think has been a very important debate. Thank you so much.
Right, thanks. Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what's been said so far, but along with that, since I'm not a driver, I'm actually interested in the people that are trying to cross that road. And the length of that road was my taking when I went up and viewed it. I don't know if anybody else took the time to go and see the road, but I think it was I learned a lot by going up and seeing the road, not being a driver. Then I also assessed how long that would take me to cross that road. And I was, to be truthful, it was worrying the time. So I would like that assessment to include how many people would actually be crossing that road at any given time, especially probably at the busy times as well, in that assessment. And I don't know if that could be included in how we would gather that evidence. Thanks, Stuart.
Okay, Councillor Logan.
Thank you. I think Mr McFadyen hopefully would be kept in the loop. I understand fully that this Petitions Committee cannot make a decision that would change rules and regulations of the council. We can only listen to what's getting said to us today, then pass it to wherever we are, as or not, as the case may be. I think one of the starting places as well is, and I think I picked that up correctly as well, that the school patrol or the patrol crossing person has concerns regarding the road, so must have a fountain of information, you know, what happens on a day-to-day basis. Does she manage, does she not manage? Who would be doing what? Does people, as in adults, come to have to help them across the road? So I think that's a starting point as well. I think it's vital that they speak to the school crossing patrol person. But I also think that Mr McFadyen needs to be kept in the loop as to where or what's going to happen and where we would be taking this. And if it's the Road Safety Committee, then that's fine. But I think also, and I'm going back to where I started, we're only one part of this whole mess for the whole of South Lanarkshire. That the police have to, you can't just say, well, the police don't have resources, but you have resources, because we don't. We're on the same boat. So therefore, it needs to be a collective of who is the interested parties in road safety, and the police must be part of that loop as well. So it's maybe when we get to the road, I'm not on the Road Safety Committee, but maybe when we get to the Road Safety Committee, we're maybe need to look at the discussions and what for and how come. As I say, I'm not making it political with a capital P, but we really maybe need to go back to the source, i.e. Edinburgh, to say, well, that rule and regulation isn't working, and this isn't working, and various things isn't working. But Mr McFadden, and I understand that fully, came first with his petition. The rest will follow, I assume. So therefore, if we're going to get, petition, we have to know what we're going to do. So whether it's to go back to the Road Safety Committee once the assessment's done, I would imagine, or does it go first for us to debate, well, what we would like our assessments to be? I don't know, I'll leave that to the powers that be. But I think the time has come for us to have a good look at what we're actually doing and who we're actually involving, because you can't just let one lot go away and say, well, I have no money. Well, neither have I, kind of thing. And we have to see about the reporting, because I could take it, I can actually tell you the day, the time when the 2 children got hit with a car, but nothing happened because it wasn't reported in by Police Scotland. So I think that's my take, that, yep, we have to send it, but we have to do more.
It looks, if we're sorry, just before I come to you, Helen, there's 2 options, I think, that we're mulling around. Both of them is, or one of them is, we go to the Road Safety Committee, and the other one is that a recommendation go back to the Roads Department with recommendations around the next assessment. Now, we can't go to the Road Safety Committee without a recommendation. So we have to, if we're going down that route, we need to know what our recommendation is going to be. And if we're going to go back to roads for their consideration, we need to know what we're going to ask them to do. And I think that's where we are at the moment. And I think, and I'll ask our officers if the Road Safety Committee is the correct committee to refer this back to, if we have any recommendations.
Geraldine, I don't know what your thoughts perhaps on that. Is road safety more relevant than it going to community and enterprise as its parent committee? Or
in the first instance, it would be the Road Safety Forum who would consider any recommendations either you were making, or if you're asking the officers to carry out the assessment and take that back to the Road Safety Forum, that may be the appropriate way to do it, because then it's evidence-based rather than going without the assessment. So allow time for the assessment to be carried out, refer it to the Road Safety Forum, then have a full discussion. Then if there is any funding requirements, etc., arising from that, it would be community and enterprise who would need to have a look at that.
Okay, anybody got any? Oh, sorry, Helen, I forgot you wanted to speak.
No, it's all right. It's just actually sort of, well, for this and sort of going forward. I wonder if Stuart and Colin could maybe give us not an idiot's guide, but basically an idiot's guide as to like how much roughly like a crossing would cost to like implement in a zebra crossing, and we can take them back to the communities and say, look, we know that you're looking for a crossing and traffic calming measures and some bollards and some signage, but actually like this is going to cost so much out of the budget. And I think again, just to let the communities know that yes, we're looking at things, but actually this is the cost. It's not like £2,000 that you're talking about. It's not just a couple of guys coming and putting up a sign. It's actually like this is a sort of rough guide to what this is going to cost. And I know it's like how I know it's a sort of like, how big is that, whatever. But if we could just have, if just in the future, if you could maybe give the councillors a, like sort of something that we can take back to the communities to show them what actually these sort of things cost that they're asking for. Do you know, it might make it, not it might make a difference to what they're asking for, because obviously they still need it, but they might appreciate more the work that would be going into implementing them. Thanks.
I think, Colin, take that on board. I don't know if you want to respond to that, but I want to concentrate more on the business and what as the Petitions Committee is going to do. So I'll let you quickly jump back in.
Chair, yes, we can do that. We can share some earlier on some figures in terms of what a full loan scheme would look like, maybe about a couple of £100,000 there. But we can share, and maybe for any future papers we bring to this committee,
I don't think
eyeball some of the figures just so people.
I don't think it needs to come back to this committee. If it's just a generic cost breakdown, it can be sent out to the councillors, just as information. It doesn't have to come back to this committee.
Yeah. Can do that.
Yeah, okay. Does anybody else want to speak? So I just want to get clear what the committees want to do. I don't want to, I'd rather reach consensus than go into a vote. So again, the two options, and there's a wee bit of overlap in the two options, and that's why I want to sort of like separate it. Is it looks, Geraldine, correct me, we go back to, one of the options is we go back to the Road Safety Forum after the assessment's been done by the roads. Now, I don't know how the timing of that goes. And the other option is that we say, well, we know that you're going back to do assessment. We'd like you to do a wee bit more additional work on the ground rather than just relying on the statistical assessment. So I don't know what the councillors would prefer to be done. Eileen, beg your pardon.
Eileen, you're fine. I would like to ask Geraldine this question. At the minute, there is a criteria set by the council that if I wanted X, Y or Z done, or anybody to get the roads checked, measured, or the assessment done, then that's how it is. If we are moving off, this was what I was trying to say maybe badly the first time, if we are moving away from that a wee bit to say, well, really, we would like, which I think would be fine, to speak to the lollipop, well, I don't think that's what they're called, school crossing patroller to get based evidence, or anybody on the street for based evidence or whatever, then we're moving away from what is the set criteria, which I'm not saying is wrong, to do that, because we need to then have that for anybody else as well. And what I was trying to say was, it's no, I don't know if it's in our power today to say to Colin Park and his team, yeah, you will do that. Does that need to go somewhere for us to look at? That's why I was saying earlier, do we need to discuss that somewhere, be it the Road Safety Forum or be it the Community Resources Committee, to change what is our set criteria and policy? And that's the only bit I want to be sure of.
I mean, the remit of the committee, I understand, is we go back with recommendations. We can't tell them to do it definitively, but if we give the recommendations, they can certainly take it on board. And if they've got resources to do it, then they do it.
Well, I would have thought we should have a sort of set criteria for everybody that's coming through the door with their petition or future petitions.
Well,
Mr McFadden happens to be the first, which is fine.
So the recommendations, we can as a committee only either accept that there's no further action required, and that's the second option here. Or the first and third is we go to the resource, or we go to another committee with our recommendations. And, you know, the recommendations, either the resource or the committee can either accept the recommendations, or they can go, well, we don't have the resources to do it. I'm sorry, it's a good aspiration, but we can't do it. So the committee is only limited to making recommendations or just saying there's no further action required. And this is what I'm trying to do just now is, do we go to Road Safety Forum for them to consider Westwood Hill Road after the next traffic assessment, or do we go to the resource and say, do your traffic assessment, but could consider, or we recommend that you also do a wee bit more talking? Yeah, sorry, Geraldine.
I was just going to make the point that if we have been working to assessment criteria for some time and we want to deviate from those assessment criteria or add to them, then we would need to understand the implications of that for both the roads team and financially. So because it may not be easy to gather the type of information that you would like to see in the assessment, it may be very costly to do that. So I think the Road Safety Forum a paper could be taken them to outline what the assessment criteria is and what the committee potentially would like to see, to allow the Road Safety Forum to understand the implications of that and to make a determination that they could then refer back to the appropriate committee if it needs to go there, or to the executive director to consider widening the assessment criteria, because it may not either be possible or feasible to do that. So we would need to understand that. But certainly any evidence-based assessment that is carried out, whatever manner it is, that would go to the Road Safety Forum to allow them to consider it, and they would then make recommendations, particularly if it's to ask community and enterprise resources to free up funding from their budget to consider that. Because the budgets have already been set for this year and it's against a programme of works. So if you're going to alter that programme of works, they would need to understand that and they would need to agree to it.
Okay, thanks. So, Colin, I think you want to respond?
If I'm able to come in, Chair,
yes,
I wasn't sure. I know we're obviously coming towards the end. Just to maybe can I try and summarise this? I have got absolutely no issue with that being referred back to the resource, to the service, to do everything that everyone's asked for, get the police to do the enforcement, for us to do an additional survey, for us to speak to the school cross patrollers to understand what's required. That doesn't need to go to committee. That's just a good thing to do. There is no suggestion at this moment in time of any change to policy. The policy is we will conduct accident investigation or trigger points, 3 accidents or more. That's in the local transport strategy. That's been taken to the Road Safety Forum fairly recently as well. So we can easily take back those actions that you've given, and I've made a note, Stuart's made a note, and I'll happily share with Mr McFadden post this what we're going to do next. The next Road Safety Forum is in June. In terms of doing surveys and everything else, we will aim for June for the Road Safety Forum. It may not be possible. I'd rather get the right answer than the wrong answer just to meet a date. The next one after that, I think, was, I had it up on my screen a minute ago, is November. So, again, that's too far away, to be honest. But noting Geraldine's point about programming, we may not be able to, if there was something coming forward, actually prioritise it this year. Any change to policy will probably fall out of the local transport strategy exercise, and we would be looking to take sometime in spring 24, back end of spring 24, a new local transport strategy to community and enterprise. That will obviously have significant engagement with local members, communities, partners, etc. as well, which will include, amongst many other policies, road safety policies, road maintenance policies, winter policy, all of the above. So I've got absolutely no issue. It's clearly not for me to give myself the work, but if it gets referred back to the resource to consider further, one of the considerations will be do all the surveys that we talked about and then take it to the forum for consideration. And as Geraldine says, the forum will then decide what the next steps are, if that helps. So absolutely fine with whatever you're proposing to do.
Okay. Robert and then Mary.
Probably got the format for going forward. Sorry, Colin's got the format for going forward, which I think is the important thing here. I think we want to be very careful about this. I mean, the particular petition about Westwood Hill, I mean, it isn't going to be sort of drawn out and separately decided at the Communities Enterprise Committee with new resources. That's not going to happen. What's going to happen is that the arrangements for assessing these things and putting them in order of priority are the matter for the Road Safety Forum. And I think Colin's going to take on board some of the comments that have been made today, if I understand it correctly, as to whether there's other information that might nuance, if you like, the way in which the policy is looked at. Take it through his officers and their expertise, and then to the Road Safety Forum with the proper people for this kind of thing, and take it forward in that kind of way. Now, I know that's a sort of like a policy thing rather than looking at the petition directly, but I think it's the proper thing to do, because we can't really separate out the one petition about one location from some other petition and some other location, unless there's particular grounds for making them different. And I don't think we've really got that here. It's a problem that exists right across the board with a number of locations in similar sorts of situations, much as we're sympathetic to Mr McFadden's point. So I think it's got to be the policy thing we've got to do. I think Colin set out the way of doing it, and I think that's perhaps the decision the committee can make today.
So basically,
to the resource, look at the issues, and then to the committee, to the forum.
I'm happy with that. Yeah. Mary, you wanted to speak.
I was asking in terms of the criteria, Geraldine, would public consultations come into that criteria, or is that a diversion?
Public consultation would come into any change in the policy.
Okay, I think we've got a recommendation that we ask, and I'll let Robert correct me if I'm wrong. If the resource goes back and looks at the assessment, how they do the assessment, and then take it to the road safety policy. Is that my understanding, Robert?
I feel as if I'm marking my own homework here. Yes and no. I think we're obviously here today to talk about Westwood Hill, and as a result of how we apply the policies, how we're considering Westwood Hill. So I think committee today has discussed a whole series of further actions for us to do. So to continue work with the police for enforcement, do a new survey, try and gather as much information as we can over and above what we've already done, more than just a video, maybe somebody on site speaking to the school crossing patroller, try and engage if we can on site where people are wanting to cross, albeit it will be difficult. And we will then take back the Westwood Hill matter to the Road Safety Forum. But inevitably, and I think it's maybe something for the Petitions Committee to hear, because in 2 weeks' time we could be sitting here with another, maybe not 2 weeks' time, two months' time, the exact same dialogue and rehearsing the same discussion. So I think we'll take a paper to the Road Safety Forum as well, which will review what we've done for Westwood Hill and see how that could be influenced in terms of the next local transport strategy. So the local transport strategy is the document. So let's decide on Westwood Hill, positively or negatively, and then perhaps note at the Road Safety Forum, as a result of this and many other ones that are coming forward, there's a need as part of the local transport strategy to do a wider review of the actual policy. Is it three accidents, is it 5 accidents, or do we do something different? Obviously, there's a lot of work needed in that to understand what other local authorities are doing, what benchmarking is. By setting a policy that's just not going to be achievable in terms of available resources would be challenging. So I think there's two separate things: Westwood Hill to committee, to Road Safety Forum, and at the same time perhaps a paper that talks about the direction of travel for the policy change, if there's going to be one.
Okay. Do any councillors have any concern? What's that? And is that what you're suggesting, Robert?
I think Colin's put it
Okay, I'm just trying to get the wording, so...
In more professional terms, I hope you can translate that into a motion. Don't let's lose track of the patroller, because we've got some obligations towards the patroller anyway.
Yeah.
And I think you've said you have a word with the patroller about the whole thing too.
Well, again, you know, what we recommend today, Mr McFadden will get notification of. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. So, do you want to just maybe sum up?
I'll try my best. Okay, so I think what we're doing is we are referring back to the resource. We are asking them to speak to the police about the enforcement survey, the gap survey to be carried out again. They will engage with the school crossing patroller and other pedestrians on site during the time of the survey, and they will take the findings from that to the Road Safety Forum to make a decision on.
Okay, are we all agreed on that? Okay, that's
so
great.
So that is what we are doing.
The school crossing patrol.
Yep.
And I know that the Westwood Community Council are concerned about the issues and I think abuse that the school crossing patrol person suffers from the many speeding drivers. And at the last meeting I was at the Community Council, they were going to request that they're given body cams.
Okay, I think that's for something not for this committee, but thanks
yeah,
for...
but I'm not asking you to consider that point. I'm just saying that, you know, it probably would be very, very informative to speak to a school crossing patrol person.
Okay.
I'm just sort of reiterating that.
No, that's fine. Anyway, back to the point at hand. Are we all agreed with the recommendation of the committee today for the council? Okay. Right. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr McFadden. It's been a long 2 hours for you, and we appreciate you coming here. Item number 3, urgent business. I've not been advised of any urgent business, so I'll bring the committee to a close and thank everybody for their time today.